Immanuel Kant, a titan of the Enlightenment era whose intellectual legacy still reverberates to this day. But before examining the intricacies of his philosophy, let us first glimpse the life of the man who reshaped the landscape of human thought. Immanuel Kant, born in 1724 in the provincial town of Königsberg, Prussia, lived during an age of unparalleled intellectual tumult known as the Enlightenment. This period marked a radical departure from ossified traditions, emphasizing instead the power of reason, scientific inquiry, and the natural rights of the individual to chart their own destiny. As a young man finding his intellectual footing, Kant stood at the crossroads of these revolutionary ideas swirling about him, ideas which would plant the seeds of his later philosophical ruminations. Now, picture the quaint streets of 18th century Königsberg, where horses still plied the boulevards, and scholars gathered in candlelit halls to debate the latest ideas. Kant spent his entire life in this town, which provided fertile ground for his ever-churning mind. The Enlightenment currents electrifying Europe had finally reached Kant's remote corner of Prussia, setting his already prodigious intellect aflame. He absorbed the intellectual ferment around him like a sponge, steeping in the works of Descartes, Leibniz, Hume, and Rousseau until they were imprinted on his psyche. Out of this cauldron of new ideas evolving at a dizzying pace, Kant would forge his own unique philosophical vision, one which centuries later still retains its power to make us see the world anew. What exactly was so unique about Kant's perspective? He pioneered what later came to be known as the Copernican revolution in philosophy. Prior philosophers had assumed that the features and structure of the external world determine the content of our knowledge. But Kant brazenly suggested the reverse, that it is the human mind itself, with its innate cognitive faculties, that actively shapes our experience of the outside world. Rather than objective truths imprinting themselves upon a passive mind, the mind organizes and interprets sensory data by passing it through mental filters it already possesses. In Kant's model, the mind does not merely reflect reality, but in fact plays an active role in constituting it. This profound insight was Kant's singular contribution, launching a philosophical earthquake that rattled assumptions prevailing since antiquity. As we explore Kant's seminal concepts, keep in mind that his were not the detached musings of an ivory tower academic, disconnected from the real world. On the contrary, his ideas were very much a response to the unique challenges and boundless possibilities of his era, an attempt to reconcile rationalism with empiricism and science with faith. Now, armed with this context, let us venture into the bedrock foundations of Kant's intellectual legacy. Categories of understanding. The lenses through which we see the world. Imagine your mind possesses a set of lenses through which data from the outside world must pass before you can make sense of it. According to Kant, human beings are endowed with certain innate mental concepts he dubbed the categories of understanding, which actively filter and shape our perceptions the moment sense impressions reach our consciousness. In effect, these categories constitute the very wiring of the human mind, the fundamental cognitive structures we use to parse reality. Unlike ideas derived through experience, Kant's categories are implanted a priori, before any experience occurs. Take the concept of causality, for instance, the self-evident principle that every effect must have an antecedent cause. When observing one billiard ball strike another, the mind immediately and unconsciously interprets this as an instance of causality, of one object setting another into motion. But the general assumption of cause and effect is not a mere empirical observation we accumulate by noticing constant conjunctions in nature. On the contrary, Kant argues that causal thinking is hardwired into the faculties of understanding enabling human cognition. We come equipped to parse events in terms of cause and effect, regardless of whatever patterns we detect in the outside world. Such categories are like cognitive building blocks inherent to the mind. As an exercise, carefully observe your thought process the next time you witness a series of unfolding events, whether seeing a student trip and fall or watching a line form outside a restaurant. Notice how you spontaneously organize and explain such occurrences by filtering them through innate concepts like time, space, substance, and causality. Your unconscious and reflexive application of these mental categories is, according to Kant, what makes meaningful experience possible in the first place. They constitute the lens through which you comprehend the world outside yourself. Building upon his categories, Kant introduces an internal moral compass he calls the categorical imperative, a universal ethical guideline meant to transcend circumstance and personal inclination. In simplest terms, The categorical imperative urges that one should act only according to that maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. But what does this mean in practice? Consider any action you contemplate undertaking, and ask whether you could rationally will it to become an unconditional rule guiding all human behavior without contradiction. For instance, faced with hardship, one may be tempted to lie and deceive others for personal gain. Yet subjected to Kant's imperative, this maxim immediately fails. Were deceit to become universal law, the very fabric of human trust and communication enabling society would completely unravel. Lying cannot logically be willed into a general precept, and is thus for Kant morally illegitimate by definition. In this fashion, he provides a formal procedure for evaluating the permissibility of any contemplated action based on pure reason alone, without regard to its outcomes or particular circumstances. As we dive deeper into Kant's philosophical project, keep in mind that his categories of understanding and moral imperatives are not merely metaphysical artifacts, they actively shape and color human experience down to its most basic levels. They form the lens through which we perceive and navigate reality, the canvas upon which the human drama unfolds. Phenomena versus noumena. The limits of human reason. Now that we have surveyed Kant's conceptual foundations, epistemological vision, and ethical framework, let us explore more fully this notion of reality appearing filtered through the categories of understanding unique to the human mind. Here Kant introduces one of his most pivotal dichotomies, that between phenomena and noumena. Put simply, phenomena constitute the world as it appears to us, reality as our senses present it once processed through our cognitive faculties. Phenomena thus comprise the trees, cars, people, emotions we encounter in experience, the full gamut of things registering on human consciousness. Noumena, on the other hand, refer to the world as it objectively exists independent of the human mind and its constitutive categories. Here Kant cautions that the brute actuality of things in themselves, devoid of the colors lent them by human modes of perception, remain fundamentally unknowable to us. While we may perceive and structure the world of phenomena, we can never know objects as they are apart from our experience of them. Consider gazing upon a radiant sunset, with its awe-inspiring display of colors, and the deep visceral and emotional resonance it kindles within you. This constitutes the phenomenal aspect reality filtered through the lens of human sensibility and understanding. Now attempt to conceive of the sunset as it exists devoid of such perception, absent the colors, emotions, and meanings with which you imbue it. This barren reality stripped of human interpretation gestures towards the noumenal realm, a realm forever beyond our epistemic reach, according to Kant. In effect, Kant restricts human knowledge to the world of phenomena available to us, withholding ultimate or transcendent insight into reality, independent of our particular biology and psychology. The noumenal kingdom, dwelling eternally beyond phenomena, erects epistemic barriers around human reason. Transcendental idealism. To make sense of this duality, Kant proposes the concept of transcendental idealism. It's not that the external world doesn't exist, but rather, our minds actively contribute to the construction of reality. Our senses provide the raw material, and our mental structures, the categories we explored earlier, shape this material into the world as we know it. Consider walking through a dense forest. The colors, the textures, the sounds, all of these are elements of your perception, shaped by your mental categories. The forest in itself exists independently of your perception, but what you experience is intricately tied to the structures of your mind. As we navigate our daily lives, understanding the interplay between phenomena and noumena can deepen our appreciation for the limitations and possibilities of human knowledge. We don't perceive the world directly. Rather, we actively participate in its construction through the lens of our cognitive apparatus. Kant's exploration of aesthetics begins with an examination of beauty. For Kant, beauty is not merely a subjective feeling, but involves a harmonious interplay between the object and the perceiver's subjective response. It's not about personal taste. Instead, it's an objective quality that arises from the form and arrangement of the object. Think of a breathtaking piece of art, a painting, a sculpture, or a piece of music. According to Kant, the experience of beauty is universal, transcending individual preferences. The beauty lies not just in the object, but in the way it engages with the perceiver's cognitive and emotional faculties. However, some critics argue that beauty cannot be entirely objective or universal. Cultural context and personal experiences still shape one's aesthetic sensibilities to some degree. Moreover, Finding beauty in simplicity versus complexity is itself a subjective preference. While Kant's theory offers insight, beauty likely involves both universal qualities and subjective elements. Moving beyond the beautiful, Kant introduces the concept of the sublime unexperience that elicits awe and reverence. Unlike beauty, the sublime overwhelms our senses, creating a sense of grandeur and power that transcends our comprehension. Consider standing at the edge of a vast mountain range or staring into the night sky filled with stars. The enormity and intensity of these experiences evoke the sublime. Kant argues that the sublime, while awe-inspiring, also reminds us of the limits of our understanding. It's an encounter with something so vast and powerful that it surpasses our capacity to fully grasp it. Kant believed the sublime arises when imagination fails to synthesize sensory input that reason tells us is infinite. However, some theorists argue that anxiety, even fear, in the face of the unknown also plays a key role. The sublime may be more complex than Kant realized, involving an interplay between sensory overload, imagination's limits, reason's demands, and emotional response. As we reflect on these aesthetic concepts, it becomes clear that for Kant, aesthetics is not a detached realm reserved for artists and connoisseurs. It's an integral part of human experience, shaping how we perceive and respond to the world around us. The next segment of our exploration will bring Kant's philosophy closer to our everyday lives as we delve into the practical applications of his ethical principles. Join me as we uncover how Kantian ethics can serve as a guiding light in the complexities of moral decision-making. At the core of Kantian ethics is the categorical imperative, a universal moral principle that transcends personal desires and circumstances. Let's bring this principle to life with a tangible example. Imagine you're faced with a dilemma. A friend asks to borrow money promising to pay it back, but with no intention of doing so. Applying the categorical imperative, you'd ask yourself, could I will that everyone in similar situations acted in the same way? If the answer is no, if a world where promises are routinely broken is inconceivable, then according to Kant, the action is morally impermissible. This simple yet powerful principle can guide us through a myriad of ethical decisions. Whether it's honesty, trustworthiness, or respecting the autonomy of others, the categorical imperative provides a universal standard for evaluating the morality of our actions. In a professional context, Kantian ethics can guide us in treating colleagues with respect, honoring commitments, and refusing to compromise principles for short-term gains. In personal relationships, Kantian ethics emphasizes the inherent value of individuals. It calls us to treat others not merely as means to our ends, but as ends in themselves. However, critics argue the categorical imperative is overly rigid. In complex situations, strict adherence to one rule can have unintended consequences that violate other moral duties like transparency, care, or forgiveness. Integrating Kantian ethics with other frameworks like virtue ethics may lead to more nuanced decisions. For example, respecting someone's autonomy in decision-making and acknowledging their dignity becomes paramount in fostering healthy relationships. As we navigate the complexities of life, Kantian ethics provides a robust framework for making moral decisions. It's not about following arbitrary rules, but adhering to principles that respect the humanity in ourselves and others. Our exploration of Kant's philosophy wouldn't be complete without acknowledging the critics and examining the lasting impact of his ideas. Join me as we delve into the challenges faced by Kantian philosophy and explore its enduring legacy in the landscape of thought. No philosophical system is immune to critique, and Kantian philosophy is no exception. One significant critique arises from the inherent tension between the universality of the categorical imperative and the complexities of real-world moral decision-making. Critics argue that applying a single, universal principle may oversimplify the intricacies of ethical choices, neglecting the nuances of specific situations. Another challenge lies in the nature of transcendental idealism. The distinction between phenomena and noumena raises questions about the accessibility of objective reality. Critics contend that if we can never directly access the noumenal realm, our understanding of the world remains forever limited to subjective interpretations. Despite these challenges, it's essential to recognize that philosophical systems evolve and critiques contribute to their refinement. Kant's ideas have spurred vibrant debates, pushing the boundaries of human thought and paving the way for subsequent philosophical developments. His emphasis on reason, autonomy, and the dignity of individuals laid the groundwork for modern human rights theories. The notion that individuals should be treated as ends in themselves has resonated through political movements and ethical frameworks, leaving an indelible mark on discussions of justice and equality. Moreover, Kant's transcendental idealism has left an enduring legacy in epistemology, inspiring thinkers to grapple with the nature of knowledge and the relationship between the mind and the external world. As we bid farewell to our exploration of Kantian philosophy, let's carry with us the understanding that philosophical ideas evolve through critique. Kant's relentless pursuit of truth sparked revolutions in thought that still reverberate over 2 centuries later. His unwavering confidence in reason's potential drives humanity's perpetual journey toward enlightenment. Thank you for your time and intellectual curiosity. Until our next exploration, keep questioning, keep pondering, and never cease to seek a deeper understanding of the fascinating world of ideas. Stay thoughtful, and I'll see you next time.